cutie, I'm back. And today we have another episode of Beauty and the Bibliophile. If you're new here, welcome to my channel and welcome to the Cute Life. I'm your cult leader, Leah. Today we have another episode of Beauty and the Bibliophile, where I tell you about the latest book that I read while I do my makeup. If you don't know what a bibliophile is, it is a lover and collector of books. This one, that's me. Today, we're getting deep. We're getting into some psychology with 12 Rules for Life, an Antidote to Chaos by Jordan B Peterson. Peterson is a clinical psychologist and very interesting. One of the things that really drew me to him and made me want to read his books were some of his lectures that he gave on Disney movies. Okay? Disney movies. He loves Disney movies, and I love Disney movies. And he loves them for the same reason that I do. So I was like, I gotta read this guy's book. So if you wanna hear a summary of this book while I do my makeup, stay tuned. Okay, so 12 Rules for Life, an Antidote to Chaos by Jordan B Peterson. And this book came out in 2018. Now he starts this book talking about order and chaos, and how order and chaos are the two modalities of life. Everything in your life falls under either order or chaos. And chaos is when things are not going according to plan, or you're in unfamiliar territory, or just things aren't going right for you. You're confused, maybe lost. And order is the opposite. It's when you're in flow. It's when the things you plan go according to your plan. You understand yourself, your life, your place in the world, all the good stuff, all the things that we strive for. Most people anyway, want order in their life. They want to feel like they've got it together, and order does that for you. So this book is 12 rules to keep your life in order. So rule 1 is stand up straight with your shoulders back. So he starts this chapter talking about bullies and how a lot of people get bullied because there's some sort of physical restriction. And we see this a lot in children will tease another child simply just because they're smaller than them, right? But this type of bullying, it usually goes away with adulthood, though not all of it. But then there are people who get bullied not because they can't stand up for themselves, but because they won't. And this happens a lot to people who are by their nature very compassionate, not aggressive. It also happens to people who have decided for one reason or another that any acts of anger or aggression, or even just feelings of anger or aggression, are morally wrong. And this happens a lot in people whose parents may have been overly angry or aggressive. But our psychological forces are never completely negative or positive. Aggression and anger can actually help you to stand up for yourself, to protect yourself, and it can help you speak the truth against oppression. It can be a very motivating factor. Okay, I'm gonna let my skincare set for a few minutes. So those who are overly compassionate and self-sacrificing are typically also naive and exploitable. But if they could just be able to call on an appropriate amount of anger and aggression, then they would be able to defend themselves. Because, I mean, if you can bite, you usually don't have to. And this is because tyranny will usually fill the space that's made available for it. So people who refuse to stand up for themselves are usually exploited by people more often than those who truly can't stand up for themselves because of some sort of physical inability or an imbalance of power. So thoughts like, people are basically good, nobody really wants to hurt other people, are very naive beliefs and can make you vulnerable to exploitation by those who prey on people who believe exactly those things. So nobody likes to be pushed around, right? But people who have been pushed around usually start getting resentful about it, which is totally reasonable. And then this resentment can turn into real anger, making them empowered and able to stand up for themselves, and not just on a social level, but on an individual level as well. So when naive people finally start to see and understand their own capacity for anger and aggression, they start to have a little bit more self-respect for themselves. They start to stand up for themselves. And they start to understand not just that they can, but that they should be. Because from experiencing their own resentment that has led into anger and aggression, they understand how monstrous this can be. And this type of resentment and anger can transform into the most hideous of wishes and then actions. Now, some people who don't stand up for themselves, they could just have a bad habit, they just never have, and so they never started. Or it could stem from something truly bad that happened to you. But either way, not standing up for yourself is not the appropriate reaction now that you are an adult and have the ability to stand up for yourself. You should be. If you slump around and give off a vibe like you're insecure or a loser, then society is gonna view you that way, and it's going to assign you a low dominance number, just like the animals do. This will make you less happy, more anxious. It will reinforce your bad habit of not standing up for yourself. It will decrease the probability that you'll do well in life, in your career, in relationships, and overall it's not good. It's not good for you, it's not good for anybody else. But the good news is you can change, and you can start with your body language, because our emotions are partly bodily expressions. So just change your bodily expressions. So standing up physically also implies and invokes standing up metaphysically. Standing up means that you have accepted the challenges of being a human being. It means that you voluntarily decide to accept life's challenges, and you can see the gold the dragon holds. So check your posture often. Make sure your shoulders are back and standing up straight. Make sure that you speak your mind and that you put yourself out there. You put your dreams out there and walk straight ahead with purpose. And this will actually encourage serotonin to circulate through your brain as well. So when you do this, when you stand up straight, stand up for yourself, you will become emboldened and be able to better your life, take on life's challenges, and be there for other people. But in order to do this, you got to start with standing up straight with your shoulders back. So rule 2 is to treat yourself like someone you're responsible for. So most people doubt their self-worth. But in order to take care of ourselves properly, we have to be able to respect ourselves, but we don't. And this is because, you know, a lot of us carry shame around with us about, you know, something we've done, or we carry around some other baggage that, you know, something that should have happened but didn't. We also sometimes feel shame because we know we're not doing the best we could be in life. We're not the best person we could be. Sometimes we lie. But if we spoke the truth, if we lived in truth, then we would be able to respect ourselves and others and the whole world. And then who knows what we could be possibly capable of. What good could we bring to the world? So most people, they just don't value themselves at all. And it seems like they just don't believe that they deserve good care and that they shouldn't take care of themselves. They're hyper aware of their own inadequacies. Some of these are real, some of these are exaggerated or completely made up. And so to punish themselves for these inadequacies, they let themselves suffer, either mentally or actually. But it's strange because then at the same time, they believe that people in general, they shouldn't have to suffer. But they'll still let themselves suffer when some person or organization demands more of them than they're willing to give in return. Now, when you put up with this, you are putting up with tyranny. And it's not virtuous to be a victim, even if your bully is yourself. Mistreating yourself can lead to catastrophe. And obviously the most extreme example of this is someone who commits leaving their family behind with the trauma. So hatred for yourself or for mankind has to be balanced somehow with gratefulness, because you deserve respect. You are a member of the human race and you have a vital role to play in it. So you are morally obligated to take care of yourself. So in order to treat yourself like someone you're responsible for, you have to make sure you're getting what's truly good for you. And what's good for you is not the same as, you know, what you want or what you think will make you happy. It's about making sure that you are becoming a virtuous person and that you're able to help yourself and others. So before you can help others though, you gotta help yourself. And you can start to do this by defining who you are to yourself. You need to refine your personality, choose a destination, and just go for it. Because Friedrich Nietzsche said that whoever has a why can bear any how. So if you can do this, who knows, maybe you could actually end up helping the world. And this would give your life meaning. And then you could justify all this miserable existence that you've gone through so far and give yourself some real confidence. And you could do this if you could begin to treat yourself like someone you're responsible for. So rule 3 is make friends with people who want what's best for you. So if you have a friendship that you wouldn't recommend to somebody that you loved, why are you friends with that person? And some of you are gonna automatically say, well, out of loyalty. But loyalty is a two-way street, and you are not obligated to be loyal to someone who's making your life worse or the world worse. In fact, you have the opposite obligation. You need to be spending time with people whose lives would improve if they saw your life improve. If you spend time with people who praise you when you do well and don't put up with your cynicism or negativity, these are the type of people that you want to hang out with, because they're going to keep you encouraged on your upward aims. Friends of yours, and this could be family members too, of course, but any type of person in your life that isn't aiming upwards as well is gonna get jealous and maybe even kind of withdraw a little from you when they see you doing well. These are the types of people who will offer a cigarette to someone who they know is trying to quit, or a beer to someone that they know is trying to quit. You know, they get jealous when they see someone trying to do better in life. These people will withdraw their presence as like some kind of a punishment. Some people will kind of poo-poo your accomplishment or bring up some great thing that they did, either real or sometimes even fake, just to try and get the spotlight off of you so that, you know, you don't feel as proud of your accomplishments. And they want that because your accomplishments are dragging them down and reminding them that they have not stepped up to the challenge of life the way you have. You remind them that their cynicism and immobility are unjustifiable. You remind them that, you know, they've given up on life not because of some life horror that happens to everybody, but because they simply just don't want the responsibility. And you know, it's actually not easy to be friends with people who are also doing well in life. It takes a lot of courage to stand next to a person who is considered an ideal. But just, you know, be brave, do it anyway, have some humility, and protect yourself from too much compassion or pity by making friends with people who want what's best for you. Rule 4 is to compare yourself with who you were yesterday, not with who someone else is today. I also call this the do 1% better than you did yesterday rule, which I think I got from David Goggins, but I'm not sure. I think I did. So a lot of people decide whether they're doing well in life or not, or if they're a good person or not, by comparing themselves with other people. But this really is not fair to yourself, because we've all lived different lives. So in order to stop doing this, you need to start paying attention to yourself. So you need to really start focusing on your feelings and your thoughts and observing them. And observing the things that bother you, that like really bother you, that like nag at you, that you can't get out of your mind. So you need to ask yourself about this thing that is bothering you. What's actually bothering you? And obviously you're gonna have to spend some time thinking about it. But once you've pinpointed what is truly bothering you about this thing, you need to ask yourself, is this something that I can fix? And is it something I would fix? And so if the answer is no to either or both of those questions, then you need to kind of aim lower, right? With whatever this thing is that's bothering you. So, you know, Peterson gives the example of a pile of papers on your desk. You walk by and you see it all the time and it bugs you, but you don't want to deal with it because you know there's scary things in there like bills and tax papers and things you just don't want to deal with. So you kind of have to figure out how you can deal with this. And you can start by saying, okay, well, I don't want to deal with these papers, but can I sit and look at them for a couple of minutes? And if even that is like feeling very overwhelming, like you just don't even want to do that, okay, well, can I sit and look at them for 1 minute? And try to, get to at least something like that. Is looking at these papers for 1 minute, is that something you can do? And is it something that you would do? And after you've been sitting there for a minute, you'll realize that, suddenly this pile of papers is kind of shrinking. And you'll see that it's just a bunch of little tiny parts that you can take on little by little. And once you do this thing that you were afraid of doing, but you did, you have to reward yourself. It could be something super simple, but something that you like a glass of wine, watching a movie, something that you want to do. Now, a lot of people, for some reason, feel like they shouldn't have to motivate themselves like this. I don't know why. Maybe they think they should be stronger than that or whatever. They just think it's silly or dumb. But I mean, really, like, what do you know about our own psyches? They're so complicated. Human beings are simultaneously one of the most complicated things in the universe, and then they can't do something simple like set the clock on their microwave. So if you do this every day for a while, you'll start to see things improving, and you may find yourself in a better situation, even a better life situation. But we're not dictating here what better is. That's not what you want to focus on. Basically, what you're trying to do is just focus on becoming a better person. You want to set your sights on the betterment of being and aligning yourself with truth. And this will bring habitual order and beauty to your existence. And there still will be evil to conquer, suffering to endure, and becoming a better person because of it. So instead of playing the tyrant with yourself and trying to force yourself to accomplish certain things or to become the kind of person that you don't think you can really be, just start paying attention to the things that bother you. You are negotiating with yourself, not playing a martyr or a tyrant with yourself. And you don't have to be frustrated with yourself anymore because you've learned how to do things through incremental progress. And this will help you discover who you are and what you're capable of. And you're finding solutions to your particular problems, solutions that are tailor-made just for you. And then you also end up becoming a lot less concerned with other people because you've got plenty to do yourself. Because to journey happily may be better than to arrive successfully. So compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. So rule 5 is do not let your children do anything that would make you dislike them. So nobody likes a bratty child, not even their own parents sometimes. So you want to ensure that that doesn't happen. And there are some principles you can follow to do that. So principle number 1 is limit the rules. And principle number 2 is use minimal necessary force to enforce those rules. I think what he means by limiting the rules isn't that there shouldn't be rules, but the less of them that the child has to, one, remember. And it seems like it's more about getting the child to be able to reason for themselves what's right and wrong, what's expected of them and what isn't. So I'm assuming these limited rules are more general rules to follow. So like a lot of things would probably fall under a lesser amount of rules, if that makes sense. I could be totally wrong. I don't have kids, so don't ask me, but that's what I think he means by that. More like having principles for them to live by rather than rules. Anyway, a third principle could be that parents should come in pairs whenever possible. And if this isn't always possible, you know, as a married mother and father, at least there should be a mother and father working together. And if you can't even have that, you need at least a friend to be able to help you out. And this is because, you know, it's very easy for parents to make mistakes. Raising kids is very difficult, and sometimes if you're tired or you've had a hard day at work, you need someone there who can observe from the outside and let you know if, you know, you're being too harsh, or just to step in sometimes and give each other breaks. So a fourth principle, which is a lot more psychological, is that parents need to be aware of their own capacity for anger and vengefulness and their ability to be cruel. Because, you know, nobody sets out to be, you know, a terrible mother or father, but you see terrible parents every day. No parent can handle being dominated by a toddler. There's going to be a part of you that wants revenge in a way. You see it, you know, all the time with, you know, parents who are truly trying to be compassionate and tolerant, and their little toddler has a temper tantrum in the supermarket, which is super stressful on everybody, including the parents. And then, you know, 10 minutes later, when the toddler comes running up to tell their parent like what a cool thing it just did, some sort of accomplishment, and the parent is like, oh yeah, that's nice, you know, because they're still upset about what happened. And even if it's not like a conscious revenge thing, there's just, the parent needs some space, you know, and the child could perceive this more as like intentional revenge. And then if this happens enough times, you know, the parent kind of slowly withdraws little spontaneous moments of love, and then the child doesn't get the kind of nurturing and support that it needs. And this is fewer opportunities for the child's development. And this, there kind of becomes this kind of slow turning away on the parent's part. Now, a parent who's aware of this in themselves can actually put in a plan of action for discipline, and so that to ensure that this kind of thing doesn't happen. In families that don't do this type of thing, the punishment is kind of handed out randomly depending on how they feel that day, and that can be very stressful for children because they never know what to expect from a parent. Then there's a fifth and final principle, and that's that parents have to see themselves as proxies of the real world. And this obligation supersedes any responsibility to provide happiness or foster creativity or boost self-esteem. Parents need to ensure that their children are going to become socially desirable adults, because this is what's really going to provide them with security. It's even more important than fostering individual identity. This can come later, but only after a certain amount of social sophistication has been developed. If their actions are making you dislike them and you're their parent, imagine what that action is going to do to someone who cares a lot less about them than you do. So it's better to let your children know what's acceptable behavior and what is not, so that they can develop a sophisticated sense of being a responsible citizen of the world. So clear rules make for secure children and for calm and rational parents. Clear principles of discipline also balance mercy and justice. It helps the child, it helps the family, and it helps society at large expand this module of order, which is what keeps the world from basically going up in flames. So don't let your children do anything that would make you dislike them. So rule 6 is to set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. Or in other words, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. So if you want to be able to speak freely about the world, you need to clean up your life. Are there things going on in your life that need to be cleared up? Are there things that you can do to make your life better and that you would do? And if the answer is no to any of this, then at least just stop doing things that you know are wrong. And don't waste time, trying to figure out how you know they're wrong. You know the difference between right and wrong. We all do. And only do things that you could feel good about telling someone else that you've done. And you can use your own standard of judgment for this. You don't have to listen to someone else's arbitrary code of life to live by. And you also have to stop blaming others for problems in the world. And if there isn't, peace in your household, don't blame others. Don't blame, capitalism, the radical left, just other people. Because if you can't bring peace to your own household, how dare you try to, criticize a city or a country? So if you can start to do this, you'll start to make your life less unnecessarily complicated. And then all you'll be left with are, all the normal tragedies of life that we all deal with. But you'll be better equipped to be able to bear those tragedies. And you may even become a force for good in the world. And maybe the world won't seem like such an evil place after all, especially if everybody did this. So set your own house in order before you criticize the world. So rule 7 is to pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. Expedient is something that may be practical and convenient, but might be immoral too. So how do you know what's meaningful? So Peterson says that at minimum, it is at least alleviating pain and suffering. So one way you can pursue this is to say to yourself, to the best of my ability, I'm going to act in a way that alleviates unnecessary pain and suffering. And this is a way to aim at becoming a better person. Now, why would you want to do this? Why should I become a better person? And the answer is because we have all seen the alternative. The alternative has been the past 20th century with all the horrors that we learned about in history class. So expedience is to follow blind impulse. It's narrow and selfish. It's immature and irresponsible. Meaning is the opposite. It emerges when impulses are regulated. It provides an antidote to chaos and suffering. It's what makes things matter and makes things better. And a lot of people are probably going to say, well, what can I do to bring meaning and make the world better? Well, you could start with that pile of papers on your desk and just little things. It could be just being grateful for your family and delivering them a delicious meal. Now, having meaning in your life is not the same as being happy. It's more like atonement. It's paying your karmic debt. It's how you remember the tragedies of the world and the pathology of history. There are a lot of people who carry with them guilt for the sins of their father. They feel guilty for their ancestors' contribution to the world's suffering. But instead of punishing yourself for these sins, Peterson is suggesting that instead you just focus on what's good and bringing good. And this will spread first to yourself, then to your family, then to your community, then your country, and then the world. And this is how you make up for the sins of the father. So pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. So rule 8 is to tell the truth, or at least don't lie. So if you want to be a good person, you have to not lie to others, of course, but especially to yourself. So it's our responsibility to see the world for what it is, to look at it, even if it's horrible, and especially if it's something that's going to disrupt what we've always thought to be true. Nietzsche said that a person's worth was determined by how much truth they could tolerate. So how do we know if we're lying to ourselves? One thing you have to do is start really paying attention to your physical responses in your body to the things that you're saying, either to yourself or to someone else. You'll start to notice this kind of sinking feeling and almost like there's some sort of a division going on inside. This could be, happening when simply you're just, trying to use big words for appearance or trying to act like you are familiar with the subject someone is talking about. Or, it could even be when you're using someone else's words as a way to not have to take responsibility for thinking. And as we start to do this, we'll start to be living in truth, which is a very admirable goal. It's actually a goal that could be on top of all your other goals in life. So living in truth does not mean that we won't suffer. Life is suffering. We are all vulnerable to the terrible things in life, even if it's just the normal things like aging. But this type of suffering isn't enough to really corrupt the world. In order to corrupt the world, you need a lie, and you need a big lie. And in the big lie, there is always a certain force of credibility. So why? Why shouldn't we lie? Especially if it's, for a small gain or to keep from hurting someone's feelings or to keep the peace. Or why not just turn away from things that are too painful to look at? And the reason is actually really simple. It's because if we do this, things are going to fall apart. Without an attention to truth, then culture itself deteriorates and evil prevails. A lie is connected to everything else. It's a little drop of sewage in even the most expensive and wonderful champagne. And if the lie is big enough, it spoils the whole world. The biggest lies are usually just composed of a bunch of little lies. And the smallest of lies is where the big lies start. So first, there's just a little lie. Then several more lies to prop that lie up. Then distorted thinking as a way to avoid the shame of the lie. And then the distorted thinking leads to unconscious beliefs and actions. And sometimes the most horrific actions humankind has ever conducted. Truth is what takes a person and breaks that person down into something simple, like their word. And this way they can become a partner rather than an enemy. And the truth won't come in the form of other people's opinions or as slogans or an ideology. Your truth has to be based on your experiences. If your life is not what it could be, start with trying to always tell the truth. If you are clinging desperately to an ideology or wallowing in nihilism, try telling the truth. If you feel weak or depressed or rejected, try telling the truth. Because in paradise or in heaven or in an ideal situation, everyone tells the truth. So start telling the truth, or at least don't lie. Rule number 9 is to assume that the person you're listening to might know something you don't. So a true, genuine conversation of mutual exploration has to be between people who've decided that they're more interested in what they don't know than what they do know. Because, I mean, you already know what you know, and unless your life is perfect, you probably don't know enough. If there's anything going on in your life, disease, relationship problems, financial problems, basically it all stems down to not having the proper knowledge on the issue. If you just knew enough, you might not suffer or suffer less. But your current knowledge has obviously not been able to stop you from suffering. So by definition, it's insufficient. And you have to accept this before you can converse with someone philosophically. To have this kind of conversation, you need to be able to respect and accept the other person's experiences. Because it's always better to learn from someone else's mistakes instead of making them yourself. And you're not going to learn about those things unless you converse with people on a genuine basis and not just trying to spew your own ideas just to reiterate them to yourself or to listen to yourself talk. You've got to be really listening and meditating on what the other person is saying instead of being in your head strategizing how you're going to reply to this person. All you're doing then is just seeking validation, insisting on your rightness. And if you're really engaged and listening and meditating to the other person, you don't have to be strategizing in your head. The way you feel, the things you think, or your questions, they'll just come about naturally because you're engaged. So listen to yourself and the person that you're speaking with, because this kind of conversation and search for knowledge really is the highest form of wisdom. Socrates has been described as the wisest man ever because he knew that what he knew was nothing. So assume that the person you're talking to might know something you don't. Rule 10 is to be precise in your speech. You want to be careful what you tell other people and yourself. You really want to try and articulate your thoughts and feelings and strive to use the correct words. You don't want to sweep baby monsters under the rug. You want to be courageous and purposeful with your words because they're going to create your reality. If you're vague with your words, you'll never know one thing from another. Everything kind of blends together, and this makes the world much too complex to manage. You have to consciously define the topic at hand, especially if it's about something difficult, or else it becomes about everything and nobody can talk and have a discussion about everything. You see this a lot between couples when they've kind of stopped communicating because every argument they have becomes about anything and everything that's ever gone wrong, ever is going wrong, ever could go wrong. And there's no way you can have an agreement or a rational discussion if you're discussing everything. It's just too much. Instead, you have to be very specific and precise. You have to say, this exact thing is what's making me unhappy. But in order to do that, you really have to be able to take the time and think about what exactly is wrong. And then when you relay that information, you have to be honest and precise with what you're saying. If you don't, if you shrink back and get timid because you're afraid of how they're going to respond to preciseness and truth, then all you're doing is feeding a dragon that will someday come out and devour you. So be precise in your speech. Rule 11 is don't bother children while they're skateboarding. So this chapter is kind of about parents or people in general being overprotective and how they don't want their children or people doing anything that could be considered dangerous, skateboarding. And this danger can be not just like physical activities, but it can also be a perceived attitude. When children are participating in these activities or having these kinds of attitudes, it's usually about them trying to figure out who they are and trying to see how they can transcend their current state. They're trying to become the hero of their own story. But some parents do not like losing their babies, so they unconsciously become overprotective. And when parents do this, they make their children dependent on them. And this isn't good because, as we talked about before, parents are supposed to be preparing their children for the world and for their potential partner. And people do not like dependent people. They want fully conscious and awake partners. So when children are participating in these, possibly dangerous situations and attitudes, they're also really testing their own capacity to have control in an out of control situation. When they are pushing back against authority, they're testing to see if there's actually any real authority there, like the kind of authority that you can rely on in a possibly crisis situation. Now, if you are a healthy adult, you do not want to be with a child. You want to be with another adult. You want someone who's a contender, who you can grapple with. If you are a smart person, you want someone smarter. If you're tough, You want someone tougher. You want someone who can bring something to the table that you can't already provide. And if someone is still dependent on their parents, they can't do this. So if you let your children test the boundaries, you're actually, within reason, you're actually helping them to toughen up. And I mean, if you think that being a tough person is bad, if you think that tough people are dangerous, I mean, wait till you see what a weak person is capable of. So leave children alone when they're skateboarding. Rule 12 is pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. This chapter made me think about my husband so much. So Peterson starts out by talking, you know, petting a cat on the street. It could be a cat or a dog. He didn't want to leave out, you know, the dog people, but he's a cat person, so he's calling it cat, but it applies to dogs as well. And I thought of my husband during this chapter because my husband, if he sees a dog, he goes straight to the dog. I even have to like sometimes remind him, I'm like, hun, that's a service animal. It says do not pet. So anyway, babe, I love you. But in other words, this chapter is talking about to appreciate the small moments in life. So he's talking about how wonderful cats and dogs are and how they're this really wonderful expression or manifestation of being, how they're a form of being in like its purest form. And what's even more amazing about them is that they are a form of being that looks at human beings with approval. On a good day, they're a cute little extra bit of light, and on a bad day, they can be a real pick-me-up. So when you get these quick little 15 seconds of wonder and bliss, let it remind you that with all the terrible things in life, these types of things, moments with animals, with your family, with awesome, beautiful scenery, it makes it worth it. So pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. So yeah, that is the 12 Rules of Life, an Antidote to Chaos by Jordan B Peterson. I really liked this book. I thought there was a lot of good insights. I liked how the 12 rules were kind of presented in a light-hearted manner. I particularly, which I didn't go into any of this stuff, but I particularly like his understanding and the way he shows that everyday life is tied up in more mythological thought. I'm not describing this well at all. But basically, he talks and refers to a lot of stories from the past, mythology, fairy tales, as archetypical and representative of our lives. And you know, I'm gonna love that. And he talks a lot about Disney movies and referencing them as metaphors for our life, which is exactly why I love Disney movies. So we kind of had a, you know, a connection there. So when I ordered this book, it was a while back, and I ordered it because I thought it sounded interesting. I heard it referred to in a YouTube video or something. I can't exactly remember how I found out about this book, but I ordered it, and then it came, and a while after, I had it for quite a few weeks, and then there was some kind of controversy that happened with him, something on Twitter. I don't know exactly, I'm gonna be honest. I don't really know what happened, but I was like, okay, well, I got his book. I'll hear from the horse's mouth, like what kind of person he is, and yeah, maybe, I'm sure it was about, he's an author, I'm sure he was talking about something that somehow relates to his books and his work. So I'll find out for myself. But when I read this book, I did not hear anything bad. I didn't hear anything. Maybe I missed something. Can someone tell me in the comments? I don't know. I thought it was really good, and I didn't hear anything worthy of getting kicked off of a platform. But anyway, that was the book, and I liked it. And if you liked this video, let me know by giving it a like, a thumbs up. It's how I know what kind of videos to make, and it lets me know you care. Make sure and subscribe and hit the notifications bell so that you won't miss the next book, the next episode of Beauty and the Bibliophile. And I will see you in the next one. Bye. But our psychological, and not just like on a one-on-one social, so when naive people can finally understand and so when naive people so and the kinds of wishes it can turn, and the kind of wishes that this type of resentment and anger can lead to. No. So rule 2, because Friedrich Nietzsche said that if your life has a why, you can stand up to any how, or something like that. No. They will probably, they might withdraw now rule 4 is to compare. Now rule 4 is to compare yourself, not, and once you do this thing, you to install virtue and you're going to act in a way that alleviates pain and suffering to the best of. And if the lie is big enough, it will destroy. If you are vague with your if you're vague with your words, then so when children are I thought it was kind of not silly, no. Now when I ordered this book, it was a white